For years, Ami Brown carried the weight of silence, a burden so heavy that few could imagine its full impact. To the world, she appeared as a devoted wife of Billy Brown, the patient and loving mother of a large family, and the heart of the Alaskan Bush People clan, always calm and composed in front of the cameras. But behind her quiet smiles and steady demeanor was a woman holding on to years of betrayal, disappointment, and heartbreak, much of it coming from the people closest to her. Ami's life was marked not only by the trials of fame and the pressures of living under constant scrutiny, but also by personal battles that most viewers never saw. She survived cancer, faced the death of her husband, and endured the strains of raising children who were sometimes at odds with her. Through it all, Ami remained strong, often hiding her pain behind a facade of resilience, determined to keep the family together and maintain the image of unity that the show projected to millions of viewers. Yet, even the strongest people reach a breaking point, and after years of holding back, Ami began to speak, revealing secrets, disappointments, and emotional wounds that stunned everyone who thought they knew her. The 5 people she would name as having hurt her the most were not random individuals. They were family members, friends, and close associates whose actions left lasting scars. These revelations were not simply about anger or revenge. They reflected the complexity of human relationships, loyalty, and the cost of keeping secrets for decades. In her story, viewers could see a woman who had endured tremendous pain, fought for her survival in multiple ways, and now, finally, dared to confront the truths that had shaped her life. The pain of being misunderstood, ignored, or betrayed by those she loved most weighed heavily on Ami, but it also became the lens through which she could examine the past and take control of her narrative. Her story reminds us that fame and family, success and hardship can exist side by side, and that behind every public image lies a private struggle that shapes the person we see on screen. Ami's courage in speaking out came not from a desire for drama or publicity, but from a need for acknowledgement, understanding, and, above all, healing. She wanted the world to know that her journey was not just about surviving illness or raising children in the wilderness, but also about navigating the emotional minefield of family life fraught with conflict, misunderstanding, and heartbreak. Each name she would eventually reveal carried a story, a wound, and a reason for her pain, and each was connected by a thread of love, loss, and loyalty that complicated the feelings she had toward them. The weight of this history, the accumulation of small and large betrayals over decades, finally pushed her to speak, and in doing so, she offered the world a rare glimpse into the private struggles behind a life lived in the spotlight. In this way, Ami Brown's story is not just one of scandal or family drama. It is a story about human resilience, the difficulty of forgiveness, and the complex nature of family relationships, particularly when intertwined with fame, illness, and personal ambition. As she recounted her experiences, the emotions she conveyed were raw and authentic, inviting viewers and readers alike to understand the depth of her suffering and the courage it took to confront it. Matt Brown, Ami's firstborn, was long considered the heart and spirit of the Brown family, a son whose presence brought both joy and challenges. To Ami, he had once been the bright, restless child who filled the cold Alaskan nights with laughter and warmth, the boy who carried the family's burdens when the cameras weren't rolling, and the young man who never failed to call her mama, even as he grew taller than her. In those early years, their bond seemed unbreakable, a relationship built on shared love, adventure, and family survival in the harsh wilderness of Alaska. Yet life, as it often does, introduced complications that no one could have predicted. In 2016, Matt's battle with alcohol addiction first became serious, though the show barely addressed it. Ami experienced this as a private heartbreak, a silent crisis that weighed more heavily on her than any public scandal. Every day, she prayed for him, tried to reach him, and hoped that love and patience would be enough to bring him back from the brink. For a mother who had already survived life-threatening illness and devoted herself to keeping her family intact, watching her son struggle was a pain that no one could fully understand. After his first rehab stint, Ami hoped for stability and for a renewed closeness between mother and son, but addiction's grip proved relentless. 2 years later, in 2018, Matt returned to rehab, this time while the family had moved to Washington to allow Ami to receive cancer treatment. The physical distance between mother and son compounded the emotional separation, leaving Ami to face not only her own health battles, but also the slow erosion of the relationship she had treasured most. When Matt later went public with accusations that his late father, Billy Brown, had withheld earnings from the show, Ami felt the impact as both a betrayal and a personal loss. The words he shared in videos and interviews, describing himself as cold, hungry, and alone, cut deep, suggesting that the family life she had devoted herself to maintaining was misunderstood and even resented. To Ami, the anger directed toward Billy and implicitly toward her threatened to erase years of dedication, loyalty, and shared struggle, forcing her to retreat further into silence that had long been her refuge. The situation worsened when accusations of assault were made against Matt in 2019 by two women, a show coordinator and a former friend. Although prosecutors declined to press charges, the scandal shocked the family and the public alike. Ami experienced this not as a moment of gossip, but as a profound blow to her identity as a mother and as the family's emotional anchor. Watching the son she had nurtured and supported become estranged from his siblings and shunned by other family members created a type of grief unlike any other. By 2020, Matt's absence in the show left viewers questioning his whereabouts, while Ami silently carried the burden of watching a life she had once helped shape begin to unravel. Her hope that love and guidance could heal her family was met with the painful reality that some fractures run too deep, and that survival, even in the wilderness of Alaska, could not guarantee emotional closeness or family harmony. Ami's experience with Matt is emblematic of the struggles she faced with all her children, a mixture of love, disappointment, resilience, and a heartbreaking understanding that sometimes the people you care for most can unintentionally or deliberately cause the deepest wounds. Even though Matt remained a figure in her heart, the estrangement and public nature of his conflicts left scars that would not easily heal, forcing Ami to reconcile her love for her son with the painful reality of his choices. In reflecting on this relationship, it becomes clear that the hurt she endured was not merely about misbehavior or rebellion, but about the gradual erosion of a bond that had once seemed invincible, leaving her a lifelong sense of grief, frustration, and unspoken sorrow. If losing Matt to addiction felt like enduring a slow-moving storm, what came next with Noah Brown was more like a sudden lightning strike, one that left Ami Brown reeling in ways she could never have anticipated. Noah had always been the gentle, quiet, and thoughtful son, the one Ami often said most resembled her own nature, loyal, soft-spoken, and careful not to stir conflict. In the early years of their lives together, she trusted him deeply, believed in his sense of fairness, and relied on his steadiness as a source of emotional support within a family that was often chaotic and unpredictable. However, in April of 2025, that trust was shaken in a manner Ami could never have imagined. Noah called the police, not to protect himself, but to report concerns about his mother. He claimed that she was acting confused and unstable, suggesting she might have been introduced to meth by her daughter Rain and Rain's husband, Josiah. He also alleged that Ami was neglecting her medication, couch surfing in a remote cabin known as Liar's Cove, and potentially exposed to unsafe situations, including weapons carried by Josiah. From Ami's perspective, this was not a simple misunderstanding or a well-meaning intervention. It was a profound betrayal by her own son, the one she had once relied upon as an emotional anchor for family. For a woman who had survived stage 3 lung cancer, pneumonia, and the death of her husband, this action cut deeper than any previous hardship because it came from someone whose love and loyalty she had taken for granted. The act of officially involving authorities marked a public fracture in the family, one that created both emotional and social repercussions. To her, Noah's actions implied doubt not about her choices or her judgment, but about her sanity and credibility as a mother and as a central figure in the family she had worked so hard to keep together. This was compounded by previous instances in which Noah had taken legal steps against family members, including a 2024 restraining order against Rain, citing harassment and substance use. His legal filings painted a picture of a family at war with itself, and Ami was caught in the center, struggling to understand how her own child could both love and act against her. Her pain was not born of anger alone, but from the grief of realizing that loyalty, the very thing that binds families together, could be replaced by suspicion, doubt, and public scrutiny. Ami did not respond to Noah publicly. She said nothing, did not fight, and chose silence as her shield, much like she had done during other moments of family turmoil. Yet, those close to her noted that her quietness spoke volumes. In her mind, the relationship with Noah had changed forever, not through malice, but through what she perceived as a betrayal of trust, a misunderstanding of intentions, and a failure to recognize the sacrifices she had made over decades. She grieved not just the actions themselves, but the idea that the family she had spent a lifetime nurturing was capable of questioning her integrity and judgment. In the end, the wound Noah inflicted was less about what was said or done in a single moment, and more about the long-term fracture in a mother-son bond, one that left her questioning whether the closeness she had once shared with him could ever be restored. This experience with Noah became emblematic of a broader struggle that Ami faced with many around her, the challenge of balancing love, loyalty, and authority within a family that was deeply interconnected, constantly in the public eye, and often unable to separate personal feelings from public actions. It was a heartbreak she had not anticipated, a lesson in vulnerability, and a stark reminder that family conflicts are rarely simple, especially when trust is broken in ways that are both private and legally documented. Noah, in Ami's narrative, became not just a son but a symbol of the unpredictable, painful complexities of family life, and his actions contributed to a deep, enduring scar that shaped her perspective on loyalty, love, and the cost of speaking the truth. Long before fame, cameras, or the rugged Alaskan wilderness, Ami Brown was a teenage girl named Amora Branson, growing up in Texas with dreams, curiosity, and a life yet to be written. Her mother, Earlene Mima Branson, was an important figure in her early life, a source of guidance, love, and a model of the family bonds Ami would later struggle to protect. When Ami met Billy Brown in 1979, she was just 15 years old, young and impressionable, captivated by the promises of adventure, freedom, and a life far removed from the confines of her Texas upbringing. Billy, then 30, was full of charisma and dreams of his own, and their whirlwind romance quickly led to marriage. Though Earlene reluctantly allowed the marriage, she insisted that her daughter finish school, a condition that Ami did not fulfill, and one that marked the beginning of a separation that would haunt both mother and daughter for decades. After leaving Texas, Ami never returned home, and Earlene experienced the profound pain of losing a child not to death, but to isolation and circumstances beyond her control. For 30 years, Ami's family had no knowledge of her whereabouts, her well-being, or even whether she was alive, a silence enforced, according to her brother Les, by Billy's controlling nature. Letters went unanswered, phone calls were blocked or ignored, and any attempt to maintain a connection failed, leaving Earlene and the rest of Ami's family in a state of limbo and longing. This absence created an emotional vacuum that lingered in both their lives, a wound that could not be healed by time or distance. When Alaskan Bush People premiered in 2014, Earlene saw her daughter's face on television for the first time in decades. Older, thinner, but unmistakably Amora, now Ami. She watched in silence, hoping that Ami might one day reach out, reconnect, or at least acknowledge the family she had left behind. But that hope went unfulfilled, and the distance between mother and daughter remained. Years later, when Ami was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer in 2017 and given only a 3% chance of survival, Earlene's concern deepened. She tried desperately to contact her daughter, calling hospitals, sending letters, and even pleading with show producers to provide information about Ami's condition, but her efforts were met with silence. Over time, Earlene's health declined. By 2020, she suffered from Alzheimer's, pneumonia, and the blurring of memories that made distinguishing reality from television difficult. Sometimes, when she saw Ami on the screen, she feared her daughter was already gone. Other times, she smiled faintly and whispered words of forgiveness, instructed her son Les to tell Ami that she forgave her, though she never forgave Billy for the decades of separation and control that had kept mother and daughter apart. Ami herself would later reflect on forgiveness as a complicated, difficult process, emphasizing that it was not about forgetting past pain, but about surviving and moving forward. The absence of her mother, coupled with the years of isolation from her family, left Ami with a wound that never fully healed. Losing Earlene twice, first to distance, then to illness, shaped her understanding of loss, loyalty, and the consequences of choices made in youth and adulthood. It was a wound that became part of who she was, influencing how she approached her own children, her extended family, and the relationships she valued most. In Ami's life story, Earlene's absence and eventual death represented a mixture of love, regret, and unresolved pain, illustrating the complex interplay of familial bonds, control, and the lasting effects of separation, her mother's struggle, her longing to reconnect, and the finality of her passing added a layer of emotional depth to Ami's narrative, reinforcing that the family conflicts and personal betrayals Ami experienced were part of a lifelong pattern of challenging relationships. Through this lens, it becomes clear why Ami's experiences with her own children and family members were so intense. The loss of her mother created a template of longing, misunderstanding, and the high stakes of emotional loyalty that would echo across decades. Earlene's story within Ami's life is both a cautionary tale and a reflection of the enduring power of family. Even when those ties are strained, broken, or manipulated by circumstance, if Ami's mother Earlene represented the past she lost, then her brother Les Branson represented the past that refused to let go, a living reminder of the life Ami left behind and the consequences of her absence. For nearly 4 decades, Les lived with a question that haunted him. Why had his little sister disappeared? To him, Ami was more than just a sibling. She was a girl who walked beside him to school, laughed at his jokes, and promised she would always stay close. That promise vanished in 1979 when Ami married Billy Brown. And from that moment, she became someone else in Les's eyes, a sister controlled by a man who dictated the terms of her life, her letters, her phone calls, and even her memories. Over the years, Les made countless attempts to reach Ami, writing letters that went unanswered, leaving voicemails that never received a return call, and sending family photos that were returned unopened. Each failed attempt deepened his grief and made the distance feel more permanent. Yet he never stopped searching. When Alaskan Bush People began airing in 2014, Les watched not for entertainment but for clues. Any mention, any glance, or even a fleeting hint that Ami remembered her family and still cared. But instead of answers, the episodes only reinforced his sense of loss. Ami appeared on screen as a symbol of survival, faith, and resilience, yet the family who loved her first was conspicuously absent. The public recognition of her life came without any acknowledgement of those who had raised, nurtured, and loved her before fame and cameras changed everything. When Ami was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer in 2017, Les saw a final opportunity to reach her before it was too late. Lacking any direct contact information, he turned to social media, posting a heartfelt message in a Facebook group dedicated to Alaskan Bush People fans. He pleaded for her to know that despite years of silence, they still loved her, missed her, and regretted not being able to do more. His message resonated with fans and went viral, yet Ami did not respond, leaving Les with the difficult realization that her silence was deliberate, shaped by decades of loyalty to Billy and the life she had chosen. To outsiders, the situation might have seemed like a misunderstanding or a family simply grown apart, but to Ami it was more complicated. Every unspoken word to Les, every ignored message, was a reminder of the control she had lived under, the obligation she could not break, and the loyalty she could not betray, even in grief. When Ami eventually named the people who had caused her the most pain, Les's name appeared not out of hatred but heartbreak. His persistence, his inability to let go, had forced her to confront a past she was trying to leave behind, reopening wounds that had never fully healed. Ami's silence in response to Les was a reflection of both love and sorrow, a recognition that his search, while born of care, made her confront choices, regrets, and memories she would prefer to bury. In this sense, Les represented not betrayal in the conventional sense, but the painful truth of a family divided by circumstance, control, and time. His relentless pursuit served as a mirror, reflecting the parts of Ami's life she had tried to keep private and reminding her that family, loyalty, and love are never simple. Ami's experiences with Les illustrate the complexity of familial bonds, showing that even actions driven by devotion can unintentionally inflict emotional wounds. The story of Les Branson and Ami's life demonstrates that family loyalty can be double-edged, offering hope, love, and support on one hand, while forcing confrontation, reflection, and emotional pain on the other. Through him, Ami's narrative shows the intricate layers of human relationships, the simultaneous presence of care and hurt, persistence and sorrow, love, and the impossibility of returning to the past. It is a testament to the reality that family connections, no matter how strong, carry both the power to heal and potential to reopen wounds that never fully close, leaving a lifelong impact on the heart and soul of those involved. After decades of surviving illness, loss, and family strife, Ami Brown may have thought that the most difficult chapters of her life were behind her. She had endured cancer, pneumonia, and the death of her husband, Billy Brown. And for a time, it seemed that the worst of the storms had passed. Yet in 2020, a new challenge emerged that proved just how persistent the shadows of the past could be. A man named Robert Mann, a doctor from Tennessee, claimed that years before Alaskan Bush People ever aired, he had given Billy $20,000 as an investment. According to Mann, Billy had promised him a 10% share of any profits generated from books, documentaries, or other creative projects associated with the family's Alaskan adventures. A second contract followed in 2009, adding another $10,000 and a further promise of 10% of all future earnings. As the show gained immense popularity, Mann alleged that he never received the compensation he had been promised, and when Billy passed away in 2021, Mann directed his legal pursuit not at the deceased but at Ami herself. By 2022, he returned to court seeking to add Ami as the executor of Billy's estate, effectively making her responsible for settling the financial claims tied to his legacy. Legally, Ami now found herself at the center of a storm she had not created, forced to defend both her husband's memory and her own role as the guardian of his estate. The lawsuit was not merely a financial dispute. It reopened wounds that Ami had spent decades trying to protect. Her life, already marked by personal struggle and public scrutiny, became once again a subject of media attention. Headlines highlighted her name, linking her to controversy and past decisions that she had long tried to leave behind. The emotional toll was enormous. Those close to Ami reported that she experienced what could only be described as emotional whiplash, forced to relive years of loyalty, sacrifice, and the complex dynamics of her marriage while simultaneously dealing with legal pressures that threatened the stability of her family. For Ami, the lawsuit underscored the persistent challenges of navigating both public and private life. It was a reminder that fame and legacy carry not only recognition, but also accountability, often in ways that feel unfair or overwhelming. Her lawyers argued that the federal court lacked jurisdiction and that the matter should be handled in state probate court. But regardless of legal arguments, the emotional impact was immediate. Ami faced renewed stress, uncertainty, and the knowledge that even after surviving illness, betrayal, and personal loss, the past could resurface in ways she never expected. The lawsuit also forced her to confront the truth that the life she had built alongside Billy, the life of creativity, survival, and family she had nurtured, was not as untouchable as she once believed. Contracts, debts, and promises tied to Billy's name proved enduring, reflecting the long-lasting consequences of decisions made decades earlier. In many ways, the Robert Mann lawsuit became symbolic of the larger themes in Ami's life: loyalty, betrayal, responsibility, and the weight of legacy. It illustrated how external pressures, financial or legal, can intersect with deeply personal experiences, intensifying existing emotional wounds. Ami's response was measured and private. She withdrew from public appearances, focused on her fragile health, and prioritized her emotional recovery. Yet, those who observed her journey recognized the depth of the struggle, understanding that this legal challenge was not just about money, but about defending a lifetime of memories, commitments, and the integrity of a family that had endured so much. The Robert Mann case, while legal in nature, had profound emotional consequences, reminding Ami and those around her that even survival, resilience, and love cannot fully shield one from the reverberations of the past. It reopened chapters she had hoped were closed, challenged her peace of mind, and tested her ability to maintain the dignity and strength that had defined her public persona. Through this ordeal, Ami's story continues to reveal the extraordinary resilience required to navigate family, fame, and the unexpected trials that life can present, demonstrating that healing is not a single event, but an ongoing journey through both emotional and practical challenges. After years of enduring illness, loss, betrayal, and public scrutiny, Ami Brown finally reached a point where she could reflect openly on the people who had caused her the most pain. Her life had been shaped not only by external circumstances, cancer, the death of her husband, and public attention, but also by the complex dynamics within her own family, the very people she had loved, trusted, and sacrificed for. Matt, her firstborn, had once been the son whose laughter brought warmth to the cold Alaskan nights, yet his struggles with addiction, public accusations, and estrangement fractured a bond that Ami had held sacred. Noah, the quiet and gentle son who most resembled her own personality, had acted in ways that she perceived as betrayal, calling authorities and legally challenging family members, creating wounds that cut deeper than words could describe. Her mother, Earlene Mima Branson, had been lost to her twice, first through separation and Billy Brown's controlling influence, then through illness and death, leaving Ami to carry a grief that never fully healed. Les, her brother, while motivated by love, reopened old wounds through his relentless search and public appeals, reminding Ami of the life and loyalty she had been forced to leave behind. Finally, Robert Mann and the legal battles over Billy Brown's estate forced her to confront the unfinished business of the past in a public, legal, and emotionally taxing way, threatening the peace and dignity she had fought so hard to preserve. Taken together, these 5 individuals represented the most profound sources of heartbreak in her life, but they also highlighted the resilience, strength, and courage that defined Ami as a person. In naming them, Ami did not speak out of spite or revenge. She spoke to reclaim her story, to acknowledge the pain she had endured, and to articulate the challenges of balancing loyalty, love, and survival in a family constantly under public scrutiny. Her revelations serve as a testament to the complexity of human relationships, showing that even the closest bonds can be tested by misunderstanding, distance, and differing perspectives on loyalty and care. Ami's journey demonstrates that survival is not simply about overcoming illness or hardship, but also about navigating the emotional labyrinth of family, fame, and personal identity. By sharing her experiences, she invites the world to understand the often unseen emotional labor required to maintain family unity, manage public life, and endure betrayal without losing oneself. Her story also serves as a reminder that forgiveness is complicated, that silence can be a form of protection, and that speaking out, even years later, can be a powerful act of self-preservation and healing. Ami Brown's reflections on these 5 key individuals are not just a chronicle of pain. They are an exploration of love, loyalty, loss, and the enduring strength it takes to survive a life marked by extraordinary challenges. In the end, her courage to finally reveal the names of those who hurt her most is a declaration of agency and truth, an assertion that she is more than the struggles she has endured, and that despite betrayal, illness, and heartbreak, she remains a woman who survived, who loved, and who continues to define her own story on her terms. Through it all, Ami Brown's life illustrates a universal truth, that family, with all its flaws, can both wound and heal, and that speaking one's truth is not only an act of courage, but also a vital step toward reclaiming identity, restoring dignity, and finding peace in the midst of life's most difficult challenges. Her journey, while deeply personal, resonates with anyone who has faced betrayal, loss, or conflict within the family, showing that even in the darkest moments, resilience, love, and the will to speak out can light a path forward, transforming pain into understanding and survival into a form of triumph. For years, Ami Brown carried the weight of silence, a burden so heavy that few could imagine its full impact.